If you have a reactive dog, a dog that barks, lunges, growls, or completely loses control when it sees other dogs, people, or fast-moving objects, you've probably been told a very simple story. That your dog is being difficult. That it's trying to dominate. That it needs firmer correction, stronger leadership, or stricter discipline. That story is not just incomplete. It's dangerously wrong. Because what looks like bad behavior on the outside is, in many cases, a deeply ingrained neurological survival response on the inside. And until you understand that, everything you try will feel like pushing against a locked door that never opens. Let's go deeper than surface-level advice, into the brain, into the nervous system, and into the hidden psychological patterns that shape reactive behavior. Because once you truly understand what's happening, you won't just train differently. You'll see your dog differently. The moment your dog reacts, that explosive bark, that sudden lunge, it feels immediate, almost unpredictable. But from a neurological perspective, it's anything but random. It begins before you even realize it. When your dog detects a trigger, another dog, a stranger, a bicycle, that sensory information first reaches a part of the brain called the thalamus. Think of it as a relay station. From there, the brain has two possible pathways. The first pathway is slow and thoughtful. Information is sent to the cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reasoning, evaluation, and decision-making. This is where a calm dog processes the world. I've seen dogs before. That's not a threat. But there's a second pathway. Faster. Older. More primitive. This one leads directly to the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center. Neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux famously described these as the high road and the low road, Ledoux, 1996. The low road is designed for speed, not accuracy. It exists for one reason, survival. In a reactive dog, this low road dominates. Instead of pausing to evaluate, the brain jumps straight to action. The amygdala receives the signal and treats it as danger. Within milliseconds, it activates the sympathetic nervous system, the body's fight-or-flight response, Sapolsky, 2004. Adrenaline surges. Cortisol floods the bloodstream. Heart rate spikes. Muscles tense. Attention narrows. And here's the part that changes everything. By the time your dog is barking and lunging, the decision, if we can even call it that, has already been made. Not by the thinking brain, but by the survival brain. This is why punishment fails in reactive dogs, and often makes things worse. When you correct a dog in that state, you are not communicating with a thinking mind. You are intervening in a full physiological stress response. The dog is not weighing consequences. It is reacting to perceived danger. Even more critically, the brain is forming associations in that moment. And the brain doesn't think like we do. It doesn't say, "I was corrected because I barked." Instead, it links experiences that happen together. Trigger appears, pain or discomfort occurs, trigger becomes more threatening. This is a fundamental principle of associative learning, first demonstrated by Ivan Pavlov, 1927. The same mechanism that teaches a dog to salivate at a bell can teach a dog to fear a stimulus more intensely. So instead of reducing reactivity, punishment can actually deepen it. This is not a theory. It's been consistently supported by research in animal behavior. Studies have shown that aversive training methods are associated with increased stress, anxiety, and aggression in dogs, Hybe et al., 2004, Ziv, 2017. What looks like control in the short term is often suppression, not resolution. And suppressed fear doesn't disappear. It builds. Now here's where it gets even more interesting, and more unsettling. Reactive behavior is not just about what's happening in the moment. It's about what has been wired into the brain over time. There are three major forces shaping that wiring. The first is early development. Between roughly 3 and 14 weeks of age, puppies go through what behaviorists call a critical socialization period, Scott and Fuller, 1965. During this time, the brain is rapidly categorizing the world into safe and uncertain. Experiences that occur during this window are processed with openness and flexibility. Experiences that don't occur often remain unfamiliar, and unfamiliar things are more likely to trigger caution or fear later in life. This doesn't mean a dog is doomed if it missed early exposure. But it does mean the brain may default to caution instead of neutrality. The second force is fear memory. The amygdala doesn't just detect threats, it stores them. And it stores them in a way that is remarkably persistent. Research has shown that fear memories are encoded with high emotional intensity and can be resistant to extinction. Ledoux, 2000. In practical terms, that means a single negative experience can leave a long-lasting imprint. But here's the twist. Fear doesn't stay specific. It generalizes. A dog that had a bad experience with one dog may begin reacting to many dogs. Not because they're the same, but because the brain is pattern matching. It's looking for similarities, not exact matches. From an evolutionary standpoint, this makes sense. It's safer to overreact than to miss a real threat. But in a modern environment, it creates dogs that seem unpredictable, reacting to things that don't appear threatening to us. The third force is repetition. Every reactive episode strengthens the neural pathway behind it. This follows a principle in neuroscience often summarized as neurons that fire together wire together, Heb, 1949. Each time the dog reacts, the brain becomes more efficient at producing that reaction. The threshold lowers. The response becomes faster, stronger, and more automatic. This is why reactivity often escalates over time if not addressed correctly. It's not stubbornness. It's learning. And then there's a concept that explains why progress can feel inconsistent: stress accumulation. Cortisol, the primary stress hormone, doesn't leave the body immediately. It can remain elevated for 48 to 72 hours after a stressful event, Bearda et al., 1998. That means your dog's behavior today is influenced by what happened yesterday, and the day before. Multiple small stressors can stack. A loud noise. A tense interaction. A disrupted routine. Individually, they seem minor. But together, they raise the baseline level of arousal. So when a trigger appears, the dog isn't starting from calm. It's starting from an already elevated state. This is called trigger stacking. And it explains why a dog can handle something one day and react explosively the next. The difference isn't the trigger. It's the internal state. This brings us to one of the most important concepts in behavior change: threshold. Threshold is the point at which the brain shifts from thinking to reacting. Below threshold, the cortex is engaged. The dog can learn, respond, and process information. Above threshold, the amygdala takes over. Learning shuts down. This isn't a training issue. It's a biological limitation. Trying to train a dog above threshold is like trying to teach someone math while they're running from danger. The brain simply isn't available for that kind of processing. This is why effective behavior change happens below threshold, where the dog can notice the trigger without being overwhelmed. And this is where true change begins. The goal is not to suppress behavior. The goal is to change the emotional response. This is done through processes like counter-conditioning and desensitization, which are grounded in classical conditioning principles, Wolpe, 1958. By repeatedly pairing the trigger with positive outcomes, at a distance where the dog remains calm, the brain begins to form new associations. Trigger no longer predicts danger. It predicts something safe, even positive. Over time, this shifts the automatic response. Not instantly. Not dramatically. But reliably. And here's the deeper psychological shift, the one that often changes everything for owners. Your dog is not trying to give you a hard time. Your dog is having a hard time. That distinction matters. Because it moves you from frustration to understanding. From control to communication. From correction to guidance. Living with a reactive dog is not easy. It requires patience, awareness, and a willingness to slow down in a world that expects quick fixes. But it also creates something rare. A level of connection built on observation, empathy, and deep understanding. You learn to read subtle signals, the smallest changes in posture, tension, attention. You learn to act before the reaction. You learn your dog as an individual, not just a category. And in that process, something shifts. Not just in your dog, but in you. Because one day, something small will happen. Your dog will notice a trigger. Pause. And instead of reacting, it will look at you. That moment may last only a second. But it represents something profound. A brain that is beginning to feel safe. A system that is learning a new pattern. A relationship that has become a source of regulation instead of conflict. Your dog is not broken. It is operating exactly as a brain is designed to operate under perceived threat. But the brain is not fixed. It is plastic, adaptable, capable of change. And with the right approach, that change is not just possible. It's inevitable. Every video on Paws Chronicles gives you one thing: the truth about what's happening inside your dog's mind, backed by real science, psychology, and zero fluff. Subscribe so you never miss an upload, and if you have a dog in your life that's been misunderstood, misread, or mislabeled, this channel was built for you. See you in our next video. Bye.